for as long as I can remember, just receiving instructions and listening and understanding what people are saying has been really, really hard, because they'd say one thing followed by another thing. Like, for example, in maths, you learn the first bit of an equation, then you learn the next bit, and then once you've remembered all the stages, then you can understand why it comes together to create an answer. But I'd always forget the first bit of an instruction.
I realised that I had ADHD kind of before the diagnosis. So for all my life I've known I've had issues with depression and things like that.
In my mind I have an area where I have lots of padlocks for all different experiences. Some of them are open and some of them are closed and some of them got keys in. And when it's closed with a key, it's like it's not a problem anymore. It's not something that jumps up at me. Whereas before, being diagnosed ADHD, they were all open. And they were, every time, it was like always jumping up, always being a problem.
I remember at one point as a teenager actually having a dream about being in a car and it was just going faster and faster and faster. I remember reading in a book written by psychiatrists on ADHD about how the conditions living without brakes, and I just thought that really just sums me up actually.
As a friend, counsellor, pointed out that I was ADHD, been something I was not aware of. No, that explains why I behaved like that and why I've done things like that. Oh, and it's become comfortable.
I kind of had this realisation that maybe there was another explanation and maybe I wasn't just doomed to failure and feeling miserable about it. I should also say as well, at that time I was just feeling so horrible about my degree and so many other areas in my life that I was having a bit of a sort of mental health crisis, and I was seeing the crisis team and stuff.
People with ADHD are more like Formula One cars compared to something like a Ford Focus. So Ford Focus, anyone, goes along nicely, is a good workhorse. If anything goes wrong, anyone can fix it. But if you're more like a Formula One, if you have a kind of neurodiversity like ADHD, if things throw you out of kilter, it can be harder to bring yourself back onto course.
For a long time I didn't know what was wrong with me. I kept trying to find out, and I had various diagnoses, and some of them were right at the time. But with ADHD, I could see it was something that went back a long time.
A lot of people think it's, young children, especially boys, a condition for them where they just can't focus and run around or whatever. There's so many facets to it. There's a lot of negatives that make life sometimes very difficult, but there's a lot of positives too.
Organizing thoughts, or just doing regular daily stuff, just basically just clean your room, or just basic stuff could be very hard because your mind is elsewhere, just thinking about what's your next, whatever is in your mind now, that's kind of taking all the energy and you're more focused on it.
ADHD was just 4 letters. It's a condition that I have. It annoys me that a lot of the time I can't start one thing, stick to it, finish it.
And I start more things than I can finish.
So the challenges of having ADHD are going through life not knowing you've got ADHD. So I couldn't work out quite why, my academic stuff, people would say, oh, you're quite bright, but I could never really follow through on the grades that I was told that I was capable of, or finish projects or get started on things. I'd always be doing things at the last minute, and sometimes they'd be pretty good at the last minute, but then I wouldn't have checked them through.
I only find it annoying for me after I've realised that I've started something else and started something else, and then I go back and go, oh, damn it.
A bit weird because I've got a really photographic memory with things that I'm interested in, but with my short-term memory, which goes in one ear and out the other.
I have at least 20 unfinished tasks that may or may not get done in the next 3 years, and some of them are quite urgent and important, and I need to do them, and it's often at the point that I really need to do it that I'll start doing it, and I might finish it just after I really need to.
Someone tells me their name, it's just my ears close up.
Knowing how reliant I am on my medication as well, so much has changed. I can now function better than I ever thought I could, but I know that when I have a day without it, I'm not doing so well, and I always worry that something might happen and I won't be able to have access to my medicine, and I won't be able to carry on this sort of positive trajectory that my life is going on since diagnosis.
If I'm in a meeting or listening to some news or reading something, I could be going through the motions of doing something and none of it's registering.
I want to be able to have a head changed in a way and maybe able to work on training myself to do better even though I overcompensated since I was born, because I was always running around like crazy and not paying attention to anything.
For me, doing something hands-on, I learned I struggle with having to sit down and like look up in a book.
More recently at work, I've had times when my brain just seemingly seems to sort of stop working. Something like shouting or going to a computer, trying to type something in, but it's not on. It's like it's not that I can't think of it. It's like nothing's actually happening in the brain.
So when I was a child, I'd be doing this all the time. And my mum would be, "Stop it, you're driving me crazy." You know, so I was just like, well, get me a pair of drumsticks then. You know, and so I became a drummer, but that was normal. And I'm more relaxed these days because I learned to meditate. I learned to take that energy and put it somewhere else.
Some people be quite unforgiving with ADHD and call it idiot's disease and things like that.
The challenges are other people more than anything else, because I do what I do. I'm not really aware of what I do other than the response of other people.
The other downside is I tend to function properly when I have a bit of stress, which means I'm often late because that creates the stress for getting myself together and getting up and actually getting there. So I always say to people, just basically, if you want me to be there at 4, tell me it's 3:45, and then that'll work for me.
I think that when they can see me struggling with my words or stuttering or something like that, if my brain's becoming overloaded, then they start to realise that, oh, you know, it's that thing, and so they kind of ease off. So it relieves a bit of the pressure in that way.
My brain's working a bit better now that I've got like ADHD treatment. I can now sort of, you know, follow instructions through, learn things and understand things as a whole.
One of the key things for me is that there are different cognitive patterns, and that really it's not about trying to mask these, it's much more about trying to bring them out and capture them, because there's a real brilliance to a lot of the characteristics of people with ADHD.
The way I think is a bit more creative in solving problems, or let's say I have work or something, I'll probably be more seeing a way to solve it that's different than others and could be easier.
I think very quickly, and I'm like people often say that I'm quite original, and I can use that originality and actually see things through in terms like projects and my coursework, you know, come up with ideas and stuff, whereas, you know, prior to my medication I had those things but I just couldn't really do anything with them.
There are positives to come out of it. I'm really driven in what interests me, so I've got a real interest in things like design and programming and you know, technical software and things like that. And it means that I've spent a lot of my time sort of focusing on doing all of these things. I'm really keen to get stuck straight into different projects, and if they work out and people are pleased with them, then that gives me a huge amount of joy. So actually I've become someone, like, at least in the business that I work with, like seen as the problem solver and the indispensable person.
There are a few good things. We can do a few things at the same time. We can listen while doing other things.
You know, there was one session I did once where we just played for 12 hours straight. You know, I actually played with 3 different bands and rung up another one. It's like once I get going, I can just keep going.
I have ideas coming up without thinking too much. And it's like, it's a lot of things happening in the brain, and it can help with ideas and problem solving.
There are challenges, but all the challenges have flip sides if you have the good tools and techniques in place. So for example, a lack of inhibition in the way that the brain functions. The flip side of that is skills in connective and quick thinking.
Allotment is brilliant. It was my doctor that suggested, because there's no pressure to actually do anything other than nature. It's like an experience. Whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter, it's an experience.
When it's unbounded, like in the middle of a meeting, if you want to keep interrupting because you're having really good ideas, that can be a real problem. So the kind of thing I suggest to people is to have a mind map to work from of the meeting. So if you get a meeting agenda, you can make something like a mind map from it.
What's ADHD Aware for you?
Support and guidance and meeting other people that are in a similar situation so that you feel you're not alone.
It's nice to be coming to these sort of groups, listening to other people talking about things and not feeling all that sort of shame and secrecy.
It was nice to know the different scales, the different how it affects different people in different ways, and how much of every single thing that I have or other people have is a little bit in everyone.
I guess finding other people who have got ADHD, I think that's such a highlight for me, because suddenly people are talking about all these different like hilarious struggles they're having in their life, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can relate to that. And I've never really felt like that way before, but when I come to ADHD Aware and stuff, to the drop-ins and to the discussion groups, it's just this really amazing, like, sort of peaceful feeling where it's like, okay, I'm not the only person who does that.
I'm just still like curious to see like if I can find people that have similar, just a bit similar to me. So it kind of feels really nice to be around people that I feel kind of relate to, or like they understand what I have, or when they tell them a story about me.
Well, coming here is comfortable for me. It's just like, you know, when people go to places where they want to, you know, take off their clothes, and that's the beach where they can do it. It's just like you feel like normal because other people are doing it.
Fairly diverse. There's people come in that have got ADHD, some people come in that have got the ADD, some people come in that have got ADHD and autism or Asperger's, there may be Tourette's.
Coming in to a room full of strangers and actually feeling, without them saying anything, just feeling very comfortable. People over talking to other people, chatting, it's like, this is like really good. And hearing stuff that normally is just in my head. I have an understanding of chaos, pure chaos. Has no boundaries, no restrictions and no limitations. But once you verbalise something or you hear it, it makes it solid. Then you can change it.
Come to the groups when I can, which are really great, really positive and supportive. And I also work for ADHD Aware just 2 hours a week.
At the moment, I'm just still on that path of trying to sort of figure out how all the ways of being able to be easy on myself rather than holding myself in to impossible standards.
Because it's kind of peer-led, it's, you know that you're talking to people that have got a lot of experience, but as I say, have been in the same situation as yourself. So you feel you can be quite honest and open, and people will completely understand you and what you're saying and not think it's unusual or strange.
Everyone here really wants to like work on themselves and you know, find new ways of doing things and, you know, not make the same mistakes. And having that balance is just so positive for me, because it's what, you know, it's one thing being all self-improvement, but actually that doesn't take into account the struggles I've had and continue to have because of ADHD.
I'd say there's roughly sort of a good gender divide, with sometimes more women than men. Maybe that's something about, you know, the ladies want to actually open up a bit more. Men have been taught not really to confront that side of things or open up.
There's some really good evidence that immediate rewards can really help regulate the brain function. And, you know, they're almost as effective as medication in a lot of cases, which is great.
In some ways it's strange because you meet people and you can see so much of yourself in them, whereas of course one likes to think that, you know, I'm unique and I'm just me, and then you meet people and think, gosh, the way they act, the way they speak is very similar.
I'm waiting for a diagnosis.
Okay.
Yeah, it's become clear to me what I was by visiting this group, just hearing what people say, and then I say what I have to say and they go, oh wow, yeah, yeah.
It's a good atmosphere and you meet like a lot of nice people and it helps you understand things.
Yeah, so it's a nice experience to get involved with if you can push yourself to sort of go, really, with all the distractions that come with ADHD and, you know, that bustle around you, especially in somewhere like Brighton where there is so much on offer. But if you can make a little bit of time to stick with that, you can get good things out of it, really.
Seeing people come and actually finding a place it is okay, it's a safe place to say what's hurting inside, because some people, yeah, are aware of how other people treat you. I find the funny side of it. I mean, all the time. I've got no choice really.
So these are the kind of things I see that you know, you can really turn it on its head. Anything that is a challenge actually is a hidden skill as well. But it just depends on what tools and techniques you're using to manage the challenges.